All right, excellent. So we will begin. I'll be your host today for the webinar. My name is Joey. I'm a senior account executive and sales manager here with Beanworks, also known as Sage AP Automation. And I've been here at Beanworks for about 3 years. And my role here is principally to help clients discover, I guess, what we call the wonders of AP automation through things like product demonstrations, webinars, and one-on-one meetings. So let's begin. For our agenda today, we're going to be going through first talking about the current status of AP. Typically, that's going to be very manual. We're going to talk about what does the research say, as well as what are the benefits of AP automation. We're going to cover a brief demo of the products. So that's going to be of Sage and Beanworks AP automation. And finally, at the end, we'll have a time for a question and answer period. So make sure you save those questions and we'll be able to cover them all at the end. All right, so let's get right into it. So no matter what level you are within the AP team, manual AP processes can affect you and your role. So for our CFOs and head of finances, they often aren't able to have the visibility and reporting ability over their entire organization. For them, it can also be difficult to manage multiple entities if they have a large or segmented organization. For our controllers and AP managers, it can be difficult to see where your invoices are when they're out for approval, and that's hard to pinpoint where those bottlenecks are. And then for our AP clerks, they can often be bogged down by things like the manual aspects of scanning and emailing invoices, following up on things like approvals, and of course, that really long time that a lot of AP clerks spend doing data entry. So we're now going to launch a poll to get a better understanding of who we have today on our webinar. So we're going to ask a poll here to find out what you are in your role. And we'll give a few more seconds here so that everyone can answer the poll, and then we'll be able to share the results. So again, the options are CFO, VP or finance leader, controller, AP manager, AP clerk, operations, or another role. All right, so if everyone's complete with that poll, we'll have a look at the results. All right, so it looks like the majority here are in the role of controller and AP manager. We've got a couple AP clerks as well as some CFOs or finance leaders, as well as some in other roles. So that's great. This does focus very much for that role as a controller or AP manager. All right, let's move back into the content. So next, what does the research say? So actually last year, Beanworks and Sage AP Automation, we partnered with a company called Level Research, and they did an in-depth study on AP processes across different organizations. And what they found was that most large enterprises already had some level of AP automation, while the small and medium-sized enterprises or companies with less than 100 million in revenue still had a very manual workflow. So why is this the case? Well, historically, these tools have been available for large enterprises because there was more of a need for automation with those organizations because they had such high volumes of invoices. There ended up being a lack of tools available for the small and medium-sized enterprises that left them with limited options, often patching different tools together combined with paper, filing cabinets, manual follow-ups. So we've seen all sorts of things from clients trying to use Excel to automate their AP, but ending up with having stacks of paper everywhere. Diving into the results of that research, here we can see on this slide that small and medium-sized enterprises that have manual AP processes typically experience challenges around manual data entry and routing, as well as the high rate of lost invoices. So in this slide here, you can see manual data entry and inefficient processes is BAASS, the leader here. When we asked what were the biggest pain points for these types of organizations. Manual AP processes are typically high cost and they inhibit growth. Organizations are entrenched in existing processes that are inefficient and costly. They're dependent on current systems that are not scalable or higher invoice volumes and the needs of a growing organization. So you can see here, in addition to manual data entry, manual routing of invoices for approval, that's another big pain point for this study, as well as things like lost or missing invoices. So next, I'm curious, for you in your organization, what are some of the biggest pain points that you're facing within AP on a day-to-day basis? So we do have another poll coming up here. So we're going to share that with you for our second poll to find out what are your top pain points in AP automation, or sorry, in your AP. And this is going to be top 3 here, so it looks like you'll be able to select all that apply. We've got manual data entry, the manual invoice approval process, lost invoices, paper, having too much paper moving around your office, or the lack of visibility into your AP. And we'll keep the poll open for just a few more seconds here so you can make sure you get your response submitted. All right, and I think it's time to close the poll here and see what the results are. All right, so it looks like we had a number of um, parts here to AP that were really up there for a lot of you. So it looks like manual data entry and manual invoice approval process come in a tie here at 79%. So that's very the vast majority of you find those to be one of your biggest pain points, alongside with paper and paper invoices. Lack of visibility and lost invoices also coming up often, but not as frequently. And that's probably what I would have guessed as well, especially looking at our research here. Um, Manual data entry and inefficient processes definitely jumps to the top. And I understand that pain point of paper, that's what we're going to try and eliminate as well. So stay tuned for that, and we'll jump back into our content. So how do you solve these pain points? Well, if there's a hint on the slide, it's going to be AP automation. AP automation will eliminate repetitive tasks. So that means no more scanning, printing, or emailed invoices. This will all be automated instead. Real-time financial data. So you'll be able to see your data within AP as it happens. So no waiting for invoices to come back in paper copies to get that data. You'll have that all at your fingertips. Procure to pay. So this means you'll be able to manage your entire AP from purchase order all the way through the invoice process to payments. So that's what we mean by procure to pay, is having a one-stop shop for all your AP from purchase orders all the way through to payments. With AP automation, you get unlimited users. All your data is going to be in one place. And yes, that includes multiple entities. And being a software as a service solution, you can easily access it anywhere from the cloud. And now you can have a complete AP system that frees you up for making real-time decisions, and so that you can focus on what you really want to focus on instead of being bothered by things like the manual aspects of AP, such as data entry. Once you do implement AP automation, the whole team will be able to benefit. So that involves everyone. So if we go back to what some of these roles are, for the CFO or the director of finance, they're going to have full visibility of all the AP in the entire organization. That includes multiple entities or locations. They're going to be able to report accurately across their AP. For the AP managers and controllers, they will get full visibility of where the invoices are in the process, who has what for approval, and to help them identify bottlenecks. They'll also be able to properly accrue for the invoices that they have a lot earlier than before, as they'll be digitized from the point of entry. And for the AP clerks, they will see a ton of benefit. Their data entry that they're currently spending a lot of their day on will be greatly reduced. They'll easily be able to search and recall any invoice within the system, and they can have one central place to manage all their invoices that are out for approval. So I'll keep this slide up here so that we can see it a little bit longer, but it's really going to be improvements for each aspect and role within the organization for everyone who works within any parts of AP. So even some of our approvers who may not be involved in day-to-day AP but need to approve, they'll be able to see those benefits as well. And now going back to some of the research from Level Research, they found that once AP teams adopted AP automation technology, they experienced significant improvements, especially in paper invoice volume reduction, approvals of invoices, and improved visibility of unpaid invoices. By enabling a touchless invoice environment, AP teams will experience cost savings and have more operational flexibility for the rest of the company. So what do we believe as Sage AP Automation? We are here to help make counting teams more productive. We believe that accountants should be free from manual tasks, as no one went to school to do data entry all day. Accountants should be empowered with real-time data, enabling them to make the best decisions possible. And so don't just take my word for it. I know I've been talking a little bit about AP automation so far, but we want to show you actually what it looks like in practice and how this can be applicable for your own organization and your own AP workflow. So next, we're going to jump into a quick product demo. So this is going to be an overview of the Sage AP automation and Beanworks platform. And then at the end of that, we'll be able to have a time for a question and answer period. All right, so let's jump right here directly into the software. The first screen I have opened here within Sage AP Automation is called our dashboard. This screen here gives us user-based metrics for all the users within our system, so we can see how long it's taking them to do various tasks that we discussed earlier, such as processing an invoice and approving an invoice. So we've got a list of our users here. We can see one of them down here, Tom Green. He's spending on average 139 days to approve an invoice. Wow, that's a long time. And luckily, he's just a made-up person, so there's no one we need to get mad at. But if this was someone within our organization, we might want to have a conversation of why it's taking that long to get those invoices approved. So we can see the average time it's taking for processing and approval time of these invoices, as well as how many invoices are in each person's queue. For our companies and our clients who manage multiple entities, they can sort that here at the top in order to just see what they need to. Next, I'm going to give you a general overview of what the system structure looks like, how we set up user permissions, before we cover each of our modules here in some greater detail. So as you can see here, on the left-hand side, we've got three main modules: purchase orders at the top, invoices, and then payments. We do have a fourth module that's going to be coming out soon. It's called expenses. But at this point, we've got these three main modules, and they're all designed in a very similar way. So right now, I'm within invoices, and invoices will flow from left to right through these tabs at the top. They will move from the create tab to in progress, to approvals, to export, and then to archive in that order. And that's going to be very similar throughout each of these modules. So for example, if we quickly jump down to payments, we can see it's almost the same workflow, but in blue color. The goal for that is to make it very easy and user-friendly for users to move from one module to the next. In the center of each screen will be your workspace. So in this case, it's all the invoices here that are in progress. On the left-hand side, we've got our filters at the top here, so we can filter by anything we want. We can filter by the status of the invoices, and below that, we can filter within the organization. So this here, we're able to customize to fit your organization to whatever suits you best. So for example, if you have multiple entities within your company or multiple locations or divisions or departments, we can build out this organizational structure to suit that best. In this case here, we've got Green Bean Country Club and many entities within it. In Green Bean Co., we have multiple departments. So what we can do is for those users who might only work within some of our entities, and maybe someone just works within the marketing department, we can give them access so that they only view what they have access to. So if they're in marketing within Green Bean Co., they won't see anything else when they log on, just what they have access to. So we can segment that access on a user-by-user basis. Whereas for our people who do need to see everything, so our AP team or our controllers or management, they can select all here to view all the AP all on one screen for the entire organization. Or they can use these bubbles here to select just the department or just the location that they want to see, just by selecting these filters on the left-hand side. User access can also be restricted at these tabs at the top, at this level here. So if you have someone within your organization who may be involved in approving or rejecting invoices only, but no other steps, so for example, they're not going to be entering invoices, they're just going to be approving, we can give them access to just view the approvals tab and nothing else in order to make their job as simple as possible too. They'll only be able to see approvals when they log on and nothing else. We do allow unlimited users to have access to Sage API automation. So you're not charged by user, As well, this doesn't have to relate to who has access to your Sage software. It will just be regarding who you give access to Sage API automation, which is going to be unlimited user access. So next, we're going to be able to do a quick walkthrough of each of our modules. So we'll start at the top here within purchase orders. And so not everyone's workflow will involve purchase orders. Some of our clients use purchase orders, others do not. So if you're not using purchase orders within your organization, you can ignore this section here. But if you are, I'll give you a quick walkthrough of how it will work. So within purchase orders, if you are creating a brand new purchase order within our system, that can be done here at the beginning of what we call the Create tab. That PO creator will go through and they'll be able to select, for example, what legal entity it's related to. They can search for their vendor, and this will pull in your vendor list directly in from Sage. They can enter things like a delivery date and a description. And then they can fill out the line items. So if they are going to be the one to code the purchase order as well, they can enter an account code. And again, this will pull in your account codes directly in from Sage. So you can type in the code if you knew it directly. Or even if you didn't know it, you could type in any word from the name. Let's say we type in the word expense to find our list of expense accounts that way. They can then fill out the line items, and then once they're finished, they will either click Save or Submit for approval. If they click Save, once they've created that PO, it will move on to the intermediate step here called In Progress. So this is if they don't want to yet submit it for approval. They'll be able to at least create that PO and then possibly make changes to it later. So I'll open up one of those as an example. The Sage AP automation system will visualize that PO just like this. So what that means is we'll create a visualization, so an image or a PDF of that PO with the data that was provided. So we'll be able to assign line items like this, assign a PO number, a date, a vendor address, and logo for that PO. And if you want to make more changes at this point, you can. So you can customize these line items, you can add further line items, or add further line items if you need to, as well as add any backup documentation you want to attach. So an example of that might be a letter from a vendor or contract. You can attach that, and that will live below the invoice under this section called Backup Pages. Once that PO is ready to be approved, you'll just hit Submit for approval to move it on to the next step. I'll get into how we can set up those approval channels a bit later on, but that approver, they get a notification by email that there's some POs to approve. So they can log on here, they can select all and batch approve those all or reject. Or they can go into each one in some greater detail, review the details of that PO, and then they can click approve or reject. If they do click reject, they're required to leave a comment of why it got rejected. Otherwise, clicking approve, that'll move it on to the next step or to the next approver. And if it's to the next step, that means it'll be in our committed PO tab. So this is where all those POs will live once they've been approved and awaiting invoices to match up against them. So we'll have our entire list of POs within the system here that are still open until they get closed off. They'll then move into the final tab that we have called our PO close tab. This is where your closed POs will live for a period of at least 7 years. So you'll have access in here if you do need to search them up or review them for any reason. We can also run reports, and I'll get into that a little bit later on this page, on every page, in order to download the data that we see. So that was a quick overview of our purchase order module, and I'll show you in a little bit more detail once we get into the invoice module of how we can match up those POs with invoices. So next, we'll jump into this invoice module. So this is where we can start with getting invoices into our system. There's going to be a couple different ways to manage invoices and getting them into Sage APA. So the first method is going to be by email. If you receive some invoices already by email, what we can do is we can provide you with an email address to receive those into. And you have the option. You can either provide that email directly to your vendors, or if they already have an email address set up, they can, or you can provide that email, you can set that email to auto forward so that those emails of invoices will automatically be forwarded onto our system. The first tab I have open here, the Create tab, this will be principally for those paper copy invoices. It sounded like a large number of you still had a lot of paper. That was going to be one of your primary pain points. So if you had a stack of paper invoices that you needed to get uploaded, those can be scanned in all together. So whether it's a stack of 10 or a stack of 100, you can scan those in together and drag and drop the file into here and click upload. That will automatically bring all those invoices together just like this. And if they are each individual invoices, we can auto split them in one click. And if some of them are multi-page, we can just drag and drop as needed. And then click Save and create invoices to manage those multi-page invoices. We also have a third method to get invoices in. It's called our mobile app. So you can even just snap a photo directly with the app in order to get invoices uploaded that way. Next will be our In Progress tab. So whether those invoices were scanned in, emailed in, or you snapped a photo with the app, they'll all come in here into the In Progress tab, just like this. And if there is a PO associated with it, it will show up side by side. So the invoices will come in by next business day with the data already captured for you. So that includes things like the header coding, the line item coding. That includes things like the header coding, like the vendor, the invoice number, the PO number if there is one, the dates, due dates, and then on the line items, we'll be able to capture things like the totals and taxes. If there's a PO, it'll show up side by side. And I'll show you a couple different ways where we can code these invoices in order to save us from doing that line item coding as well. So if this invoice here does match up with a PO, like this one does, we see a PO next to it, we'll be able to code directly from that PO by clicking this PO adoption button here. That will open up this window here where we can select what we'd like to code from that PO by clicking the plus, and then we can adopt those lines directly onto the invoice. Or for those non-PO related invoices, if we receive an invoice from a particular vendor and the next month we receive another invoice from the same vendor, all we'll need to do is click this green smart code button up here in the top right. What that does is that remembers how those invoices were coded last time. So it's gonna be one click here to code. It'll pop it in the lines, and then we can just save or submit for approval, and that invoice is done. We can also edit these fields if we need to. So if it was going to be coded differently, again, this pulls in your list of account codes directly in from Sage. So we can type in the code if we knew it, or even if we didn't know it, if we knew any word from the name, we could type that in to find the accounts we're looking for. And then we've had that invoice come into the system, we've captured it, and we've coded it. Next, we'll click Submit for approval, and we can then approve it. So the invoices will be sent to the approvers either via the mobile app or by email. And that approver, they'll be able to log on here and they can see an image of the invoice along with the header details and the line item coding. If there was a PO, that PO will show up side by side. So they can just click approve or reject if they needed to reject that invoice and leave a comment. I'll then briefly show you how we can set up things like approval channels to determine who will approve which invoices. So global rules will apply to the entire organization, or we can have specific rules for each entity. You'll notice at the top here, we can set up rules for invoices, for purchase orders, and for payments. So you can have separate approval channels for each of our modules. I'll open one approval channel here as an example, just to show you some of the capability. So in this approval channel, I have a set of boxes here, and each of these boxes is going to be a set of rules. So the first one I've got is going to be a dollar range. I've got between $5,000 and $10,000. The next box, I've got different departments. So I can pull in my department list. I've then got my account code list and my vendor list all pulled in here. So you can see if I wanted to add additional accounts or additional vendors, I can just add those here in order to have my approvals run upon that. Once I've created the set of rules that this approval channel will be based upon, I can then decide who it will go to. So in this case, we've set up what we call a two-step approval. This will go first to Rob and then to Sarah in that order. But we can add as many steps as we like to this approval channel. So maybe we want Jill, our CEO, to be a final approver. We can put her in the group like this. Or we can add what we call group approvals, where if we put multiple people in a group together, that means either one of them can approve. So in this case, it'll go first to Rob, then to Sarah, then to either Jack or to Jill. Either one of the two could approve. So this is a very flexible tool so that we can really automate those approval channels. Once we set those channels for all the different types of scenarios, you won't have to manually send out those invoices anymore for approval. You won't have to send out that paper back and forth or send emails to get those approvers to actually approve those invoices. Notifications as well can be automated by user. So if we want them to receive an email for every approval that's needed, that's possible. Or if it's someone who's going to receive too many invoices each day for approval, they can instead get a daily summary, which will be one email for all the invoices they need to approve for that day. Once those invoices are fully approved, they'll move into what we call the export tab. This is the final tab here to get these invoices back into your Sage software. So at this stage here, all we'll need to do is click Actions in the top right and export data. What that does is that will push all this invoice data back into your Sage software. And with the main Sage product line, so Sage 100, Sage 300, we have what's called the sync tool that we use to communicate with your Sage software. So that'll run automatically on the schedule, or you can open up the sync tool and click run in order for that sync to happen right away. So that will send all this invoice data back into your AP module. It'll create the batches for you. And then those invoices will move on to our archive tab. So this acts as your online filing cabinet in order to keep track of all that data, of all those invoices as they go through the system. It will be stored for you for a period of at least 7 years. We're free to run filters on this data if we want to run a filter by a certain date range or by a certain vendor. We can run any sort of filters we like. We can open up those invoices directly to view the data, view the approval history. Or what we can do also is run reports. So you can run reports really on any screen within our system. In this case here, you can choose to run a report either as a PDF or a CSV. I'll just run a PDF report to show you what it looks like. So on this first page of the report, I have a summary of everything that we selected. This case is 23 invoices. I can either scroll through the report or just click the hyperlink, where I'll be able to see an image of the invoice, its header coding, its line item coding, and its approval history, all on one page. As well, if there was a PO associated with it, it will show up on the next page as well. So all your audit history will be here as well. So if you do go through any sort of regular audits, you can easily just run these for reports for the auditors so they can easily find what they're looking for. Or we also have some clients who give their auditors read-only access to their entire AP automation platform so that they can go in and search whatever they need to find. So we've reached the end of the invoice module here. So next, after invoices, your invoices will flow directly into our payments module so that you can make your payments directly from our system as well. Payments are going to be optional with Sage AP Automation, so you're free to use us for payments if you like, or you can make your payments the way you do currently and mark those as paid within Sage. Either way, we do have a two-way sync on payments, which means that if you do make some payments from outside of our system, it will be reflected in here as well, so you won't be prompted to pay them twice. The Create tab here will show you what you need to pay, and it will group together those payments by vendor. So if we expand this first one, we can see it's actually 2 invoices for a single vendor. We'll also see our age payables list of what's 30, 60, 90, and over 90 days due. So we can just click Create Payments to decide what we'd like to pay. And that will move those on to the In Progress tab. From In Progress, we can make changes if we need to on that payment. That means we can do things like change which bank account it's coming from, change what payment method it's being paid as. So if we want to change it from check to EFT or ACH, we can make those changes here, as well as setting it for auto release, which if we set it for auto release, that payment will automatically be released on a certain date after it's been approved. So we won't have to release that manually. And so the payment methods that we offer are going to be standard check. That's where we can print and mail a check directly to your vendors. We offer electronic payments. So that includes ACH and EFT, so an electronic deposit directly to your vendor's bank account, as well as the virtual credit card program, where we can actually pay your vendors with what's called the virtual credit card. There's no credit involved, and instead they actually get a deposit, or sorry, an email with a credit card number, and they'll run that through as a MasterCard transaction. And there's also a cashback rebate involved on your end for those virtual credit card payments. We can then have those payments go through an approval workflow. So this is where that payment approver can click approve or reject on the payment. That's going to be the equivalent of them actually signing off on a check or approving that electronic payment to go out. Once that payment's been approved, it will move on to releases, and this is where we can select which payments we want to send out to our vendors and just click release. And finally, the last tab is called our Pay tab. And this is where we, again, complete the sync back with our Sage software in order to update everything and make sure that we're good to go in our Sage and we have all those payments marked as paid. So all that's needed is to click Export here in the top right to export that data back into Sage. Our Archive tab is again similar to the previous module where we'll have our historical database of all the payments that go through the system available for at least 7 years. So we made it through the payments module as well from start to finish. So we've covered purchase orders, invoices, and payments. Today's walkthrough was a brief walkthrough of really the general uses of our system, of the Beanworks and Sage AP automation platform. So we do encourage all of you, if this is of interest to you, to schedule a more personalized demonstration where we can uncover what your needs and workflow is in order for us to do a similar demo, but one that's more tailored to your specific needs. So we now have a bit of time open where we can respond to some of your questions. So if you do have some questions, I believe there'll be a place to enter them on your screen. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the chat or if there's a Q&A section directly, but I'll have some time to answer some of those questions if you have those at this point.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can just enter them on the chat. I do have a few questions that have already come in, but please type them in as well. So the first one is, does this tool support other languages?
All right, thank you for the question. Does this tool support other languages? So kind of a couple different ways to interpret that at this time. The software itself that you see, so that means the screen here and all the language within this is currently just in English. We are currently working on a French version as well. So that will be, that'll be coming, I'm not sure when yet. So currently the software itself is just in English, but we are working on a French version. In terms of other languages, if you receive invoices in other languages, those can still be processed within our system. And in any case, we'll be able to do our best to capture the data for you. But if any data can't be captured, it can easily be selected from the dropdown. And I'll show you again what that looks like. From the In Progress tab, you're free to make any changes. So you can edit the invoice number here, or you can select your vendor from the dropdown. So if you did get some invoices from different countries that were in other languages, you'll still be able to process those through our system. All right, and we're ready for our second question.
So the second question I have here is, can an additional supporting doc be attached with an invoice?
Great question. So yes, an additional supporting document can be attached um, to an invoice or a PO. So that can be done here at this stage. We're in the invoice in progress tab right now. You can click add pages and add backup. And you can drag and drop that file directly in here. You can also import it from the email address if it was emailed in. And it will live below the invoice under backup pages. So we have this section down below here called backup pages. So if you had a letter from a vendor, a contract, or something else to attach, that can be managed here. In the case where some of you may be doing a receiving process, so actually tracking something like a packing slip or a receipt of goods, please talk to us and we'll be able to walk you through that process in more detail as well. But in that case, if you are doing a receipt of goods, we are able to do a three-way match for you. And please get in contact with us. We'd love to explain that process in some more detail as well.
Next question I have is, do you know how many companies are currently using this program?
Yes, great question. So a little bit of background on our company. Beanworks AP Automation has been around for about 9 years. It's been around the past 3 years, so we've been partnered with Sage as their exclusive partner for AP automation, which is why we're branded as Sage AP Automation for our Sage clients. We even have preferential pricing for our Sage clients as well. Right now, I don't have an exact number, but it's somewhere in the thousands of probably around probably 3,000 to 5,000 companies use us. The majority of those are within Canada and the United States, but we also have some global companies or some companies in different parts of the world who use us as well. So yeah, in the kind of the low thousands, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 companies in total use us.
Does this tool support allocations used in Intact?
Great question. So for Sage Intact, Intact is built in a little bit of a different way. So some things work a bit differently in terms of, definitely in terms of legal entities and how those are set up within Intact. Different things like at the top level, things can be set up differently. In terms of allocations, this question I'd have to look at a bit more in more detail to see what it is specifically that you need. But for some background, our Sage Intact integration is one of our newest and strongest. So it sounds like something that we do at the moment. But if this is a very specific case of something you want to see that we support, I'll have my contact information on the last slide. So feel free to reach out to either to BAASS or to myself. I'll make sure I can get that answered for you.
Okay, next question is, if we decide to not use the payments module, will this sync with our existing AP module in Sage and that we can run our aging in Sage itself and not in the automation tool?
That's a really great question. So yes, payments, they're going to be optional. So if you decide to not use us for payments, you'll still be able to do everything you saw up until that point. So process all your invoices through our system. We'll push that information back into Sage so you can continue on with your reports within Sage as normal. So if you are doing your AP agent reports in Sage, you'll have all those details in there because we push back all that invoice data into Sage. You'll be able to continue on with your AP as normal, and that includes running different reports for payments as you do right now.
What controls are in place to avoid duplicate PO or invoices being input?
Another great question. What controls are in place to make sure that we don't have duplicates within our system? So our system does flag for duplicates, and I'll show you within the invoice module what that can look like. So we'll be able to look for duplicates automatically for you, and we'll identify those and flag those so they aren't processed by accident. So I'll just open this larger list of invoices here, and some of them actually, the first one at the top might be hard to see on your screens, but there is this red duplicate symbol on the right. So if I click on that, it will identify both those invoices that have been flagged as duplicate. So in this case, I've got two from, looks like the International Spa Association. So I might want to open one of those and possibly delete one. But if I open it, I'll see there's this big red band at the top that says view duplicate invoice. So while the system doesn't prevent me from processing a duplicate, as there might be some situations where I need to, I won't process it by accident because I'll have this big red band here at the top that'll show me that it is a duplicate invoice. So our system will flag throughout if it does recognize any duplicates.
Okay, the next question is, how can it be integrated with Sage PO module, and is AP receipt entry doable here?
That is another great question. So this is something I didn't go through in much detail in today's demonstration. With our PO module, it does actually work in one of two ways. So the standard way is what I showed today, where you're actually using our purchase order module to create and run your POs. But what you alluded to is another way that does work, which is where we can actually import your POs from your existing PO module within Sage. So if you're using Sage 100 or Sage 300, we can import those POs directly in from Sage. So that means that PO can be created in Sage as normal. We'll import it into either the approvals tab for your approvals or into committed. And then that PO can be matched up within our invoice module. And that also works if you are doing receivings. So that means you can continue to do those receivings within Sage. And our system will import the receivings feed from Sage in order to do the three-way match. So it sounds like in this case, you are doing a three-way match with those receivings, the PO, and the invoice. So we can accommodate that. And please let us know. We'd love to show you that in some more detail if you'd like.
What country is the handling of manual review of invoices done, things that cannot be recognized electronically?
Great question. So this question stems a bit into the data capture, so I'll review that in a little bit more detail here. For our data capture, Sage AP Automation and Beanworks, we found that typically OCR technology or software recognition is only going to be a certain level of accuracy. We found that only to be around 70% accurate. So at this stage right now, not fully accurate enough to really save our clients time. So instead of using OCR technology, Beanworks and Sage AP Automation does have an offshore team that is able to assist in capturing that data. So they're going to be able to recognize invoices, including things like handwritten invoices or invoices that are a bit out of the ordinary, in order to ensure that we can bump up that level of accuracy to closer to 99%.
Is AP automation compatible with all Sage products, in particular Sage 300?
So most Sage products, but yes, definitely Sage 300. So to give you a list of some of the products we work with within Sage, we work with Sage 50, Canada and US. We work with Sage 100. We work with Sage 300, and we work with Sage 500. As well, we also work within Sage Intacct. So those are the main Sage products we work with. If there's any other ones that I didn't mention that you're curious about, please let us know. We'll look into it.
I have a question that says, what about PO items? You demonstrated an expense PO, but not with inventory items. Can the program connect to Sage ERP IC to add items to a PO?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, for the clients who are doing inventory tracking and using Sage for the receivings as well, we can integrate with that. And I'll note as well is that the columns that you see within this page here or within POs, those will be customized to what you have set up within your Sage. So if you're coding right now to an items list or a class list or one of the standard lists within Sage, that can be pulled into our system as well so that we can have that appear at the line items here. So things like quantities, costs, accounts, descriptions, this is going to be customized to what you need in Sage and what you have set up. So if you are doing an inventory tracking within Sage, using a receivings module and doing a three-way match, yes, we can support that.
Is processing payments in AP automation optional, or is it at an extra cost?
So it is optional, so that means you're free to use us for your payments or not. Almost all our plans, except for our base plan, include access to the payments module. But to actually run your payments with us, in terms of fees, we do charge a per transaction fee on each payment. So there'll be a fee counting the number of checks and the number of EFT or ACH that are sent.
Can you please provide some guideline about the implementation cost and ongoing license and technique support costs?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of costs overall, we can go into that in more detail if you want to schedule a quick call with myself or someone from our team. But typically there is a one-time setup and implementation fee that is charged to get the account set up. What that involves is typically 3 main meetings. The first to do the integration where we can install Sage APA onto your servers or wherever Sage is located. The second meeting is going to be a workflow session, so to customize things like your approval channels, your POs. And then the third meeting is a training session where we can get you and your team up and running. And then in terms of ongoing support, that's going to be included with all of our plans. So all of our plans include ongoing support at any time. So if you have any problems, you can reach out to us by phone, by email, or directly in the chat within the software to get help.
So since it is 3 o'clock, we are going to end the webinar now. If you did have questions and they weren't answered, someone from BAASS will be reaching out to you to get those answered. So at this time, I would like to thank you for presenting today, as well as everyone for taking time out of their busy days to attend.
Great, thank you so much for attending. I'll leave my contact details here up on the screen, but definitely feel free to reach out to BAASS and they can get in touch with us if there's any questions, or we'd love to get in touch to provide you with some more information on Sage AP Automation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.